So 72% of internet users look for health information online, and 26% of these people actually hit a paywall where when they want additional information, they're asked to give more money. And if you extrapolate the number of Americans and internet users, that means that 54 million Americans are affected. What is the price of a paywall? If you want to read a scientific article, it can cost on average $32 to get that scientific article. And the cost of literature has gone up. It has outpaced inflation by over 250%, so it's a huge problem. You can get an abstract of a paper for free, but the abstract does not tell you the methods, the data, or the results, and that's really what you need to understand a paper. Why would someone need a scientific paper? Why would someone want to read scientific literature? One thing is, well, what if you know someone who has cancer, or you yourself have cancer, or a serious disease, and you want to know details like, should I pay more for a special cancer treatment? How would it affect my survival if I pay $50,000 more for this specialized cancer treatment? Another case would be, what if you want to find out things that you can't ask your doctor, like, will smoking pot make me stupid? Now that might be legalized soon, but you can imagine that there are embarrassing questions that you don't want to ask your doctor, but you want to know the side effects for, or you want to know what studies have been done, and you can't ask your doctor. So if you were to search the scientific literature to find details about these questions, you're going to reach this, something like this, where this item requires a subscription to, or they're going to ask you to pay a certain amount of money. Here are some other examples where scientific publications are not just for academics. I'm an academic, but this athlete found her own genetic flaw based on her symptoms. She researched the literature, and she was able to find what gene was the cause of all of the symptoms that she was seeing. This singer was able to diagnose her own ectopic pregnancy. This is Vanessa Carlton. And then this 15-year-old used all of the open access literature out there to create a pancreatic cancer test. So I'm just going to talk more about the middle case, because actually she was a favorite singer of mine. This is Vanessa Carlton. She sang 1,000 Miles. I don't know if any of you guys heard of her. But it's like one of those songs you always sing along to. But she had an ectopic pregnancy. She knew it was ectopic, and she was being treated with methotrexate, a drug to save the pregnancy. And then she started to experience these weird symptoms, and she was constantly standing up, which isn't what you really expect. So according to her blog, she basically researched herself and found an article in The Lancet, which is a medical journal, and basically diagnosed herself to go to the ER. And unfortunately, her pregnancy was terminated, but she could take that action. And I want to point something out about Vanessa Carlton. Okay, so she's a Grammy Awards winner, but she never went to college. Her education was at the School of American Ballet. So I don't know, like, if it's high school and then this, but basically there's no college education here, and yet she could use this information to diagnose herself. So normal people can use scientific literature to really enable themselves, and I think it's really important to understand that when something is wrong with you internally, you will search and find out and try to explore and really try to discover what could be wrong with you, but this is where the paywall can really hurt you. So what's the injustice of closed access papers? The average research project that the government funds is $450,000. So scientists do all this research, and at the end, they want to publish their research. How much does it cost to publish research? We know how much the publication costs are based on open access journals. It's about $2,000. So at the final stage of all of this research that is paid by taxpayers, the publishers do a little bit of work, in terms of labor cost, and that locks up all of this data. Now, there are actions to make scientific literature more accessible. So the White House has a directive to allow access to publicly funded research, but this is a White House initiative, and so that's only as long as Obama is in the White House. They're trying to make something permanent, but that's in the Senate, and we don't know when that will pass. There's been several iterations of that. So even though federally funded federally funded publications are now being open access, it's not unclear whether this will apply to the past research, 95 years of past research before copyright law came about. And a lot of the clinical trials in medicine are paid for by private companies, and these are drug comparisons, so they're pretty useful information. So privately funded research is still closed, and this involves the drugs that you take. A lot of the paper seekers are not academics. So we actually looked at Reddit, and there's a Reddit scholar thread where people can request papers, and you can see the topics that they're requesting. And 46% of the requests were for health, fitness, and medicine. And if you're in a university setting, people like to publish in high impact factor journals. That means that a lot of other academics read it. But it turns out what people are requesting are low impact factor journals. 62% have an impact factor less than 5. So what are the topics that they're requesting? These are just a sample of paper titles that you can see from Reddit Scholar. This is MDMA, so ecstasy, and heightened stress in recreational ecstasy users. Something you probably can't have a conversation with your doctor. Stress, perspectives on its cognition, and beer fermentation, homemade beer. All right, so there's a hashtag, Can Haz PDF, where you can request a paper, and someone will get that paper for you and email it to you. And this has had extremely viral growth. I don't know if the colors are showing, but it started in January of 2011, and you can just see that this is actually a break. So it's an exponential growth here. So a lot of people are requesting scientific papers and need scientific papers. Can Haz PDF was actually addressed by Sci-Hub. This is a website run in Russia where a woman is accessing the true papers and putting it in a repository. Now this violates copyright, so it's DarkHub. They have a lawsuit. And there's another similar website called Library Genesis, but this is like the second generation. There's over 40 million papers here, and these are full papers. So while a great resource, it is violating copyright. The advantage is you can get the full text, you have the full paper. The disadvantage is we don't know how long the content will be available. Links can be taken down, and they can be temporary URLs, and it's dark web, so you have to access it through the Sci-Hub website. You can't Google won't, if you search for those topics, Google won't lead you to that. And popularity attracts lawsuits. So the more popular it has become, the more likely it's attracted lawsuit. And Elsevier has already sued Sci-Hub. This example is actually authors were putting up their own papers, and they were being sued to take it down. So authors themselves can't put up their own papers. So I want to talk about a solution that we're proposing called FactPub, and it adheres to the principles of copyright. First, we have to talk about what is copyright. So facts are not copyrightable, and this was established in a lawsuit where the question is, can you copy white pages? But white pages are facts. And so this case, they decided that facts are not copyrightable. And if you think about it, a lot of scientific publications are just composed of facts. Recipes are also excluded from copyright protection. And this was a case of a Dan and yogurt recipe book. And if you think about it, methods is very similar to recipes, right? Recipe is you do this, you crack an egg, there's 5 eggs, you crack an egg. You put it in the oven for 350 degrees. Methods in the scientific paper are you use these components and you do it in this order. Equations, figures, and text are the only ways to express, and so these expressions are not copyrightable. So figures is a little bit tricky, but equations are facts because they describe something inherent, like E equals mc squared. That is the behavior of physics, and so that is not copyrightable.
Text is definitely copyrightable, though, so it's
to
mentioned here can
right.
immediately put in question the whole statement.
So in this case, it was the only way to express this idea. Like in this particular lawsuit, the plaintiff who was trying to sue for copyright could not come up with alternative ways of text to explain their idea. So if it's the only way to express an idea, then it's not copyrightable. I would say the equation is pretty solid, but the others are definitely more expressive. And all of the cases that I've cited fall under this idea of idea-expression divide, which is this doctrine that ideas are not protected by copyright, but the expression of the idea is protected by copyright. So going back to the recipe example, 5 eggs, break the eggs, crack the eggs, that is not copyrightable. But when I picked the 5 eggs from my mother's farm and I felt the warmth of the egg, in my hand, that is an expression of 5 eggs, and so that would be copyrightable. So what's the idea? All right, scientific papers. The readers want to access the scientific paper, but it's blocked by a paywall. Academics now actually have access beyond the paywall, and they can download papers on a local computer. What we provide is a Java standalone that locally extracts facts from the papers. And then this standalone will distribute the facts to our web server. So what happens is it's a repository of scientific facts where the academics can access it and the public can access it. And one thing is that the academics, because they have, if they log in and make an account, they can also edit the facts. Okay, so the key here is what we're doing is that a fact donor distributes facts and not the paper. This is just an example of our Java, it's a standalone, and you would install it locally on your own computer. You just drag and drop a couple of papers, and what's happening in the background is that facts are being extracted. And the source code is available at this GitHub, and we can also run it by command line. Okay, it takes about 30 seconds to process per paper, and it depends on the number of pages on the paper. Oh, I wanted to show you a demo. So let me just go to the demo right here, and I'll get it running. So this is the FactPub website where we are hosting everything. And this is if you are an academic and you have access to papers. You don't have to be an academic, you just have to have access to papers. So the idea is that you would download this tool, and I've already downloaded it just to save some time. Okay, so now I'm going to execute it. So, oops, it's already open. Let me just. Okay, so there it is, and I'm just going to drag a paper here. I'll show you the paper. This is the paper. It's a random paper. I don't even know what it is. Human population responses to toxic compounds. And what's going on right now is it's extracting facts, and it's going to upload it to the server. So while it runs, I'm just going to continue my talk, and then we'll come back to it in a second or so. Okay, so it's extracting facts. And then after it extracts facts, you can click on the link, and it'll take you to the page where the facts are extracted. Oh, here's the demo. It's running right now. Okay, so how does the fact extraction work? So the first thing is that we take PDF and we convert it to text. We extract text and tables, and this is actually using the work of Clamp et al. And it's actually kind of challenging because of the structure of a paper. It isn't like pure text. You actually have to recognize when there's tables and when there's figures, and that's why we use existing software to do that. And this is our contribution where we now take the text and we use natural language processing to convert the text to facts. And we made it really light, and it's basically 10 simple rules so that it can be domain independent. And we also extract acronyms. So we have a Java standalone, and we decided to release that because the required libraries and tools were already implemented in Java, especially this one. And Java is cross-platform, so people with Macs and PCs can use this. So this is just an example of transforming a sentence into a fact. So in this paper, it mentions 2 drugs treated animals perform significantly less well on the rotor than the MC-treated animals. And then what you can see, the fact here is a condensation of the sentence here, where the chew drugs treated animals significantly less on the rotor than MC-treated animals. So you don't get everything. It's not perfect. You're going to have to infer something. It's, because we can't copy the sentence directly. We're trying to get the important aspects of the sentence.
Yeah, this is horrible. It looks like instead of animals performed less, it looks like they were treated less. The meaning changed. See, it says treated animals performed significantly less well, and down below it says treated animals significantly less. That's just different. That's
Right.
not
So
a fact. That's a lie.
that was our first version where we have aimed to identify important verbs. The thing is, we figure that if you really want the paper, you actually have enough information to know whether to buy the paper. So every single sentence is converted into a condensed version of a fact. And if you look at it enough, and if you're in the field, you can kind of get a sense of, is this what you want to read? Then you could go and buy the paper. But it's there at least so that you don't pay $30 and then read the paper and decide it's not what you want. We actually have improved that. That was a version, that was like version 1, and we've now added verbs, but we haven't reassessed the performance. So these are 10 rules for fact extraction. How much time do I have left?
If you're doing 30 minutes.
I have, okay, I'll just keep going.
Yeah,
Okay, so for the first version of the algorithm, we had 9 users examine 556 sentences and their fact representations, and 70% of the facts were rated meaningful. The rest were rated misleading or meaningless, and that's an issue, right? So everything, you can't trust everything on the website, but the data is there in a condensed fashion for you to kind of see what that paper is about. Results, if we broke it down by section, results rated highest in terms of the percentage of facts rated as meaningful. We missed a lot of verbs because of the way we implemented our rules, and that was as low as 64%. Our second version, we've incorporated more important verbs. We'll have to see if this improves. So, like I said before, we were missing important verbs. For example, patients in group A died. We kind of missed died, and that's very important. And we hope we have identified that in the next version. Essential adjectives were missing, gastrointestinal tumors, for example, and important prepositions. So we're working on these 2, and our next version will have these 2. Okay, so the other challenges is, this is an automated process, and we've tested on a few thousand papers, but the parser from PDF to text can fail. We also take a lot of meta information, but we have to infer the title or DOI from the PDF, and that can be missing, or it's just erroneous or go wrong. Okay, so I've talked about the fact extraction, and now I'm going to talk a little bit about the public website. Hopefully this is done now. Okay, so this is done processing, and so now you can just click on here, and you can see what was automatically extracted was the title. And like I said, we try to identify the title, or a DOI is a digital object identifier, which tells us a lot of information about the paper. And once we have it, we can populate this field with all of the author's title and journal information. And you can see this is basically everything. This is the abstract of the paper, which we can copy directly. These are acronyms that we've acronyms that we've inferred from the text, looking at capital letters. And then every line here represents a paragraph, and every bullet point represents a sentence that has been converted into a fact. And if you read it, you can kind of get a sense of what the paper is about. Okay, so I just kind of described the FactPub website. The engine behind the FactPub website is MediaWiki. And we've processed 3,000 papers, and the idea is that people would download the standalone and run it on their own computers, and it scales with fact donors. And that way, the fact donors don't violate the law because they're not distributing papers, they're distributing facts. Oops, and I already returned to demo. So to prevent spammers, because we had a lot of problems with spammers, is that if you want to edit the paper, because there are errors, like you noticed, some verbs were missing and some things were meaningless, you actually have to create an account, and then when you log in on the Java standalone, it'll recognize it, and then you will have permissions to edit this paper. So only the paper donors and the people who possess the papers can edit the facts. The other thing is we have a search box, so if you're interested in cancer or any topic, then you can search it. Obviously, we only have a few thousand papers now, and with over 50 million papers out there, it's very small, but we hope it will grow. As I mentioned before, we have to infer the title or DOI in order to get paper details, and then we also extract acronyms and tables, and then facts from papers. So each sentence is converted to a fact. Each paragraph is delimited by lines, and then we also extract the section headings for organization. So all of this will not substitute for the full paper, like you say. It's much easier to read the full paper. It's sentences, it's what we're used to. But there is enough information to decide whether to purchase the full paper, and we hope there's enough information to make a decision whether to purchase the full paper or not. At least you don't have to purchase it and then decide this isn't, this wasn't worth it, or this doesn't have the data that I wanted. So what's next? We'd like to transform this information. It's really a subsequence of the sentence, and so the more we can add to it and modify it, the more we create new content. So we can modify the text and rearrange the text. What we really need to do is engage users. So right now it's a Java standalone, and we figure people, maybe they'll download the standalone and they'll upload papers once, but how to keep them engaged and upload papers monthly or actively, because it really scales with users. Maybe we can mail updates or list top contributors, maybe gamify it. Maybe we can honor the paper requests that tweet out to Can Haz PDF. The other thing that we've thought about, which is actually a huge commitment, is to convert the Java standalone to JavaScript, because there's a lot more natural language processing tools, and all of the tools were in Java. It would require a lot of work to go to JavaScript, but the idea is then people could install this as a browser extension so that whenever anyone browses a scientific paper, it would automatically send it to the FactHub server. Okay, so FactHub is a permanent repository to provide scientific facts to the public so that the public can search facts and find them. And the idea is that if we have enough information and it becomes big data where there's enough facts in there, then it could aid in training decision making for automated health decisions. But it really relies on crowdsourcing to populate the database. So here it is. And you can go to the URL, facthub.org. Also, I have a position available in Singapore. We don't pay much. We don't pay as much as as San Francisco, but it's only like $150 to go to Thailand or Bali. So there's that advantage there. That's it. Thanks. Yes.
So this is really interesting, and I've always been, as someone who's tried to get papers and paywalls, and it's ridiculously expensive. I'm wondering, it seems like this is a similar industry where we're in this age transition, right, where there was a reason that those publishing companies existed. They took on a certain amount of effort, right? They're paying their bills. But as publishing has become easier and tool chain, there's every day it seems like there's new ways to publish things faster and easier, especially in the scientific community. And so is there like a root cause? Like, is this really like, at the end of the day, this should be something that is ultimately, and I saw that you mentioned the White House's efforts, but is this really a play at this information is for the public good, and that we as taxpayers, will just bundle that with the research, right? It's so cheap to publish things, we'll just do the little administrative stuff to get that stuff out there for you, and then that you don't have to worry about like 15 different, I don't know, is there sort of
Yeah, a lot of universities,
systemic changes that need to happen?
I don't know if it's systemic, but like some universities like MIT require that when you publish a paper that you put it in the MIT repository that it's open. So even if you go into a closed access journal, it will eventually become open. But it's not systemic, and like the White House initiative that exists, and that's a temporary thing, but the law, even then, the White House was 6 months after publication, it would be free to the public. But already they're negotiating for the law that hasn't been passed yet, that'll be 1 year. So, there's a lot of we'll see what happens. The thing is, the publishers have this huge treasure trove of data that they don't necessarily want to give out to the, that it's a lot of money, right? And if you need that data, you're willing to pay for it. Or every university is paying tens of thousands of dollars to get access to those journals. So they're pretty powerful lobbyers. I mean, just like you have Paramount Pictures or the movie, if you look at people who are very much in extending copyright, you've got Disney, you've got the movie industry, and then you see a couple of scientific publishers. You see a couple of those on the list.
And is there, while it's not ideal to repay, is there a role that public libraries can play here to make that information more accessible? Libraries already do that to a certain extent, right? Is there a way to make that easier or better or more?
I guess the idea is that you could go into a university library if they don't have security measures, and then maybe look it up. But some places you require a school ID to go in. The other thing I've noticed is that some of them have responded by lowering the price. So they say $5 for access, like you read it. I've never paid it, but it's like $5 and maybe you read it, but you never download it, and it's kind of like, I think it's their way to make the price lower so that there's less complaints.
Well, I would surmise that calling this facts is mostly a way to circumvent the copyright protection, because in the scientific papers there are a lot of statements that could be mistaken for facts, yet they're not facts, like a hypothesis that is stated and then discarded or disproved and rejected, and yet that hypothesis, when taken out of context, may appear to be a fact, even though it's really a falsity. Also, an axiom or a postulate or a theorem posed as an open problem is not a fact. In fact, the proof of a theorem is hardly a mere fact, because contrary to stating just a known fact, a lot of actual work, creative work, goes into proving such a theorem. So misrepresenting that as a fact, I would, on my part, strongly object.
We have a disclaimer. So on the website, we already know that 30% are wrong. So on our website, we have a disclaimer, and we can certainly make it more, obvious that do not take this as, it's a mess of words where you get a flavor of the paper. When you start reading it, if you're in the field, you kind of get it. If you're in the field and you read the paper, or if it's kind of tangentially related, so this tells you that the information can be inaccurate and stuff like that. We're also working to identify opinionated words and also like negative words to catch those phrases, and we might just throw out those sentences completely.
So this is basically statements extracted from text, right? The facts are basically not necessarily true facts, right? It may be statements, logical statements extracted through text, which may or may not have meaning. It's a very common data mining.
So they pretend that these are facts, but some of these are facts and some are not facts. So it's sort of like O.J. Simpson showing up and telling them, give me my stuff, because they were going to auction off some of the property that was previously stolen from him, and yet some of the things that they actually grabbed were somebody else's baseball and such, and now he's serving his term in prison because he committed a burglary, right?
I have a question. Who are the main kind of customers of this?
Customers.
Yes, users.
Users. So we first need contributors, to be honest, right? We need to get to a certain, we need enough data. And yeah, so it'd be, what we're seeking first is people to use it and get feedback and how to make it so that people continually use it and it's not just a one-off. And then that would be the first phase. And then if we get enough in there, then ideally the public would be using it. When they search for a particular paper and say they can't find it, they would hit this and then they would skim and decide whether they need to purchase the full paper. But then even beyond that, if we got enough papers and if we got enough facts, I'm actually in the health field of computational biology. If you think about like decision making for health decisions and if you want to automate it. Like if you think about Go, Google's Go, they actually had to train on a database of Go games and Go positions and stuff like that. So if you had enough papers and if you had enough facts, yes, some of them could be wrong, but the idea is that if you had enough, then hopefully the noise would go down or you'd verify it with like person-assisted AI. But then you could probably feed that database into like maybe IBM Watson or something like that to see if any of those facts help with diagnosis or something like that.
Cool. So how can we help? I mean, a lot of this content is about community, so we really want to surface things like this to the general public, right? Because we have a Life Sciences Day on Friday, where multiple data sources are medical text. So I think this is multiple kind of, this topic could have been on Friday as well, right? So we can have multiple purposes. So how can we engage authors to submit more?
Yeah, so we need ideas for that, and I have like a couple of programmers doing it, but these are some ideas that we have. I think we need like users and telling us what's wrong and how do we engage and prioritize our things, because like to do this, to make a JavaScript browser extension, which was the initial idea, it would just take an immense amount of time and effort. So the question is, can we just engage users with the Java standalone? And I mean, like I wish I could gamify it, but I just don't have that mentality, or know how to do it. The Java source code is available on GitHub. The link is in one of the slides there. And just your comments, contact me. And I mentioned at the end that we have like very, very low-paying internships. If anyone wants to use Singapore as a base to explore Asia. Thanks.